sometimes wonder if somebody deleted my teacher business and I had to start Crayon Lane Teach from scratch, right from the very beginning again, what would I actually do? So looking back to all the different things that I tried, there are quite a few things actually that I would do differently, not because the way that I did things this time were wrong or I failed or anything like that. Just I feel like now I have a lot more knowledge on what's actually worth doing, what's actually worth putting my time into, and what actually really genuinely helps my teacher business grow. And yeah, and the things that are just not worth my time, things that I wasted my time on, which I've just, now that I think about it, I just cringe. I just cringe at how much time I put into stuff that was actually ended up being just a complete waste of time. So in this video, I thought I would share all the things that I would actually do if I was starting my teacher business in 2026. So the first thing that I would do, and I know that if you have been watching videos to do with growing businesses, growing on YouTube, growing on Instagram, whatever, you're probably just going to roll your eyes at me, but it's to keep your niche small, or you'll probably hear people saying niche down, keep your niche, so yeah, keep your niche small. Now, like, this is just actually super duper useful, especially when you are kind of starting out. However, I wouldn't say to really do this right from the very, your very first few products. So I suppose it depends, because this is me talking about teachers pay teachers, which is what I started doing. But you can apply this to, no matter what you're doing, whether you're selling something, whether you're creating, I don't know, a workshop and selling something, whether you're trying to maybe create a teacher, YouTube channel and you're trying to make videos, whatever it is you're doing, this can definitely be applied to that. So yeah, keep your niche small. So what I did is obviously, when I started out, I was creating resources for the age group that I taught. So I naturally had a niche that I was more kind of drawn to anyway. And I definitely should have stuck with that. I think after a little while, I wanted to try out different age groups or different topics, different sort of, curriculum topics. And I just then tried to do too much. And I did notice that it did kind of stunt my growth a little bit. And we all know what it's like. It's really tempting to try and do a little bit of everything, especially if you genuinely enjoy doing a little bit of everything, creating different things for different age groups, or creating, maybe like a workshop, or maybe a product, or maybe a print on demand thing that you want to sell, or maybe handmade products. Maybe, you might be just somebody who just likes all these different things. However, what could end up happening then is that it could end up confusing your customers, or the people that you're trying to sell things to, or your audience that you're trying to share things with, because they don't really know, what you're known for yet. So if you're brand new, I would definitely suggest to keep your niche quite small at first. Doesn't mean that you can't branch out later on, but pick, something that you want to be known for, whether it's a workshop you want to teach, whether it's a particular product you want to make and sell. Could be a handmade product, could be a print on demand thing, could be a digital product, could be a podcast that you do if you're maybe looking to monetize maybe sort of a YouTube channel or a podcast or whatever, or a blog. So pick the thing that you want to be known for, and that's the thing that you're going to spend quite a lot of time building, and make sure that that thing is obviously focused around, if you're making like a podcast or whatever, don't do a podcast on lots of different topics. Keep it quite focused and quite niche down. So, if it is obviously a teacher related business, which is what we're talking about, pick an age group, pick a topic, and you can even pick a topic within the topic. So if maybe you are wanting to be known for, talking about, say, kindergarten literacy or English, whatever it is it gets called. In the US we call it literacy. You can niche down that even further and talk about just writing, or talk about just phonics, or talk about just talking and listening, or spelling, or you can actually niche down probably even more than that, really, if you wanted to. And yeah, that was one of the things that if I was starting again, I would really stick at, because in Maths Teachers Pay Teachers store, I do have quite a variety of resources. I do have maths resources, I've got literacy resources, and yeah, there is a bit of a variety there, and there is definitely ones that do better than others. And funnily enough, it's the ones that I've done the most of when I did go ahead and sort of pick my niche. those are the ones that are doing better, and those are the ones where I make most of my money from. The next thing that we're going to talk about, which I do think is worth doing if you are starting your business, and it's something that I really wish I did earlier, and it will kind of almost help you pick a niche. So this sort of tip you might kind of want to do before settling on a niche, and it's looking at your data, looking at what's doing well, and using that to help you decide what to do next with your business. So again, totally depends on what you're doing. So if it's selling products somewhere, whether it's trying to grow on a particular maybe social media platform, whatever it is you're doing, you need to look at your data. So all these different platforms and websites and online stores will have data like views, impressions, click-through rate, sales, preview views, all that kind of stuff that you can look at. So you might need to take a little bit of time learning how to read that data and figuring out what it actually means for whatever you're looking at. Look at that data and use that to help you figure out what to do next. So going back to my example, what I should have done with my resources was, after I've made a bunch of resources, so don't get me wrong, when we're talking about niching down, obviously you can't niche down until you've tried out a few things. So when you are starting out, it's totally fine to try a few different things. First of all, figure out what you enjoy doing. So there's no point in doing something you hate. Find out what you're good at. So there might be a particular thing that you like making or creating that you're really good at, and you know that people will love it as well. But also it gives you a chance to collect a little bit of data and to look at what's actually performing well, what customers like or viewers like or your target market likes. So what I should have done was, when I was creating resources, instead of doing, say, a whole load of like maths resources and a whole load of literature resources and a whole load of other resources and just kind of making what I fancied, which is what I did at the beginning, is after making, say, maybe 10, 20 resources, I should have looked at what was selling the best. And obviously, when you say it like that, it's super duper obvious, and it probably might be obvious to a lot of you who are maybe just a little bit more, looking at data might make you think, well, why wouldn't you do that? But when you're starting out and you're excited and you want to try out different things, you do kind of maybe ignore it a little bit. What I should have done, as I said, was looked at the data, figured out what types of resources were selling the most, what I was getting the most earnings from, what I was getting the most views from as well. So there was obviously interest, even if people maybe weren't buying quite yet, what resources had the highest click-through rate, all that kind of stuff, and then make more of resources like that. It's the same for if you're trying to grow on YouTube or Instagram. Look at your views, look at all your analytics, your numbers, your impressions, all that kind of stuff, click-through rate, all that stuff, and make more of the things that are doing well. Obviously, I'm not saying to copy it identical, because then people might get bored, but make a different variation of it, or make like the next step. So if you're, say, making a resource and just say it's all about teaching students how to write sentences, you might then want to make a resource that follows on from that, that's a little bit more challenging, that's a nice sort of follow-up activity or extension activity, and then it just is a natural next step for the customer. That is kind of what you want to be doing. So one of the key things I want to kind of like point out as well is that even if you're a beginner and you don't have very many resources, you don't have very many videos maybe up on YouTube or whatever, this still works, because you'll probably find that at the very beginning there will be those resources or those sort of stats that are on your store or videos or whatever that will just have that, there'll be that one video or that one product that just has that little bit more views, and those are the little clues that you need to be looking out for. So when you're building a business, no matter what it is, the more stuff you put out there, it gives, as I said, it gives you more data, and you need to look for the clues. You need to look for the tiny little hints, the little clues, the little sort of signals that, oh, that thing might actually be about to take off, or that thing might actually sparks people's interest a little bit more. So it's your job to kind of almost go looking for those clues. And even if you're at the very beginning of your business, there will be clues there. Trust me, if you go and have a look, even if you've only got a couple of things to look at, there will be that one thing that will be just doing that little bit better. And even if it's just a difference of one view or, that tiny little bit of a percentage, it's still worth looking at. So another thing that I would do if I was starting my business from scratch is I would almost build my products into a little bit of a journey. Now, this is probably what people would call a sales funnel. If you're looking at other people who do online businesses, they'll talk about something called a sales funnel, and this is basically what this is. But you need to think about your products as a journey, as a kind of path. You want to be giving your customers the next step, the next step again, and you almost want to be leading them naturally down this path. And that is something that I did not do from the very beginning. As I said, I made a whole load of random things. I made things that were, quite small products that were quite inexpensive, and I also made bigger bundles. And then I was just kind of sharing them willy-nilly. There was no kind of progression really. And I really wish I'd kind of spent the time planning out almost that customer journey a little bit more. But obviously, you don't know, I didn't know that about anything about a sales funnel or anything like that when I started. So one of the sort of key things that I remember reading somewhere is you need to meet your customer where they're at. So if your customer comes across you and they've never heard of you before, they've never seen any of your videos, Instagram posts, Pinterest posts, your online store, whatever it is, your blog, they've never heard of you before, and this is the very first time they've come across you, the chances of them buying from you is quite a lot lower. So that would probably be a good opportunity there when they're first of all coming across you, is to share something free. So that could be a free download, a free worksheet, a free activity, a blog post is something free you could share with them, a YouTube video, an Instagram post that's quite valuable and got a lot of helpful tips, whatever it is. That's the kind of, you're meeting your customer for the first time and they're sort of getting to know you. So once you've shared something free with them, within that free thing, so whether it's a blog post, a video, it could be a worksheet, maybe like a freebie on Teachers Pay Teachers, whatever it is, you then want to share with them something that they could purchase from you, but it's quite a low price point. So it's that next step. It's that next step in that journey. And as again, it's not going to be something that's too expensive. Because if you share something that's too expensive, that's going to be too big of a jump. And that is definitely something that I'm a bit guilty of. Like, I'll share a freebie, and then within that freebie, I'll go right to a bigger, maybe bundle of products, where I shouldn't be doing that. I should be sharing something quite small that's paid. Then within whatever paid thing it is that you're selling, so it could be a resource, it could be a workshop, an online workshop, it could be an actual physical item, whatever it is, then you want to share something that's paid again, but it's just that bit more expensive. So it could be a bundle of products, it could be a larger version of that, it could be something linked to the product that you've just sold them that they could use with it, but it's a bit more expensive. It just depends on what it is that you're selling or that your business is based on. So then that's the natural next step in that kind of buyer journey. And then you could even go even further and just say you are somebody who you want to create, say, a membership or maybe an online course or something really quite big. Then you would then obviously have that product would be the natural next step again. So yeah, you're kind of wanting to create a bit of a journey or a path for your customers to go along. Some of them will never get past the free thing. Some of them are quite happy with the free thing, and that was like where you're going to see, that's it, you're not going to see them again. But there are those customers that will go on and they will follow the next steps. And that is something that I'm currently working on just now. And as I said, I really wish I'd done it from the beginning. And if I was starting a business again, that is something that I would be doing from the get-go. So when I'm planning on creating, particularly my resources, so whatever it is that is for your business, don't just think about each individual product that you're creating or each individual resource or whatever it is that you're making. Think about, right, I have this resource, right, what is it going to lead on to? What's that one going to lead on to? And sort of think about how they're all connected and how they're all kind of, as I say, going to take your customer down that journey. What I've actually done is I've actually had a few paid resources in my store that are doing particularly well, and I've worked backwards. So what I did is I thought, right, this resource is really popular, it's a paid resource, it's not a bundle, it's kind of like an individual resource. However, it's obviously popular for a reason. I want to get more eyes on it. So what I've done is I've worked backwards and I created a freebie that, then sort of goes back a step, which then links to that paid product. And in Teachers Pay Teachers, you can include links that you can track, so you can kind of track all your traffic. And it's definitely been worth it, because I do make a steady amount of money from these links because I can track it back. So I think the first time that I did it, I think it was only up for a couple of weeks, and I'd already made, I think, like $60 extra from people clicking on the link that was in the freebie to then buy the full resource. So it's definitely worth it. And if you think about it, if you can do that with everything that you're selling, or with all the sort of like natural product lines that you can create and sell, that's a lot of extra traffic that you're getting, extra people that you're sending to all these different, stages of your products or stages within the customer journey. Obviously, that's going to take quite a lot of time to make that, especially if you're looking back at resources you've already made or whatever, but I definitely do think it's worth the time. When teachers are looking for resources or workshops or different ways to improve their skills, and they're looking to buy things, they're not just looking for one particular activity, one worksheet, something that they can just use once and then that's it. They're looking for ways to solve problems, and if you can offer lots of different ways to solve that problem and then give them the next step so they can go more in depth and to go further, then that's exactly what they're looking for. And obviously that's then great for you, because then you're able to offer more things that are actually going to be helpful. So the next thing that I would do differently if I was starting my teacher business in 2026 is I wouldn't chase every platform. So I've mentioned before in a previous video all the things that I have an account with, and it's actually ridiculous. I think I'll go through it again, but we've got a Teachers Pay Teachers store, I have a test store, which is the UK version, I've got an Etsy store, pretty sure I've got a Made by Teachers store, and another one which I can't remember the name of it. I've also got this YouTube channel, I have an Instagram account, I have a TikTok account, is that everything? An email list, and I also have my own website with a blog and a Pinterest account. So when I say about trying to chase everything, all those things that I just mentioned is way, way, way too much. I do not use all these things, and even the things that I do use, I don't use them all at the same time. So obviously I have my Teachers Pay Teachers store, test store, I don't really upload things on there, same with Etsy. Obviously I use YouTube. The thing that's actually that sort of prompted me to include this in the video is Instagram. So for a very long time, I spent quite a lot of time on Instagram. I would post a lot of stuff to do with my Teachers Pay Teachers on Instagram. So I spent a lot of time creating things for Instagram and was not getting very much back. And that is something that I would definitely, if I was starting now, I would not be wasting my time on, for me. Same with TikTok, it just wasn't, worth it for me. So yeah, I do think I would suggest if you're starting your business now, pick probably one platform at first if you are wanting to do a bit of marketing. Obviously, when we're talking about selling things or whatever you're basing your business on, again, I would pick one. So if it's a Teachers Pay Teachers store you want to open, just do that. Don't worry about the other ones. If you are wanting to create a workshop or a course, focus on that. Don't try and do other things at the same time. If you're trying to build a tutoring business, focus on that. And again, if you're promoting your business, pick, I would say, one place, and I'm talking about social media, to focus on. So that could be a Pinterest account. It could be only Instagram if you feel like it works for you. YouTube, again, if you feel like it works for you. If you're doing a tutoring business, you might just want to promote things on, say, your local Facebook marketplace or whatever it is that you might sort of promote yourself, and that, is enough. I think trying to do too many platforms at once, you end up burning out, spreading yourself too thin. But then I also noticed for me is that because I was spreading myself too thin, I wasn't doing any of these particular platforms or marketing particularly well. I was just trying to get it done, and obviously I think that's maybe why it wasn't as effective. And maybe if Instagram was my thing and I was only focusing on Instagram, it might have performed differently. I don't know. You don't know, obviously. You can't go back and change. But yeah, that's definitely something that I would do differently. If I was starting my business again, is I would pick one, the one that I enjoy the most and the one that I'm going to be the most consistent with, at first at least, and I would stick with that. However, if you do notice that you have picked one and maybe you've been doing it for quite a long time, maybe 6 months to a year, and you're actually seeing that it's not really bringing you anything and it's becoming a bit of a time suck, I would definitely look at changing it and maybe trying something else out. But again, it would probably mean completely leaving that platform you've just done, which I know is really difficult because you'll feel like you've wasted so much time, you know, building that platform, and it is quite hard to walk away from. Like, I felt like that with my Instagram account. Like, I spent quite a lot of time, you know, on it, creating content, building up quite a decent follower base, even chatting to certain people like through, you know, DMs and things like that. So I understand it is very difficult, especially if you've built up quite a good account, to walk away from it. But at the end of the day, if your goal is to be successful at business and you're trying to make money and it's not making any money, you kind of need to sort of walk away from it. Obviously, there are places for things like Instagram, so just say your business is, you have a very big community side to your business and that's really important to you. Obviously, that might make it worth keeping, but it's completely up to you. You'll know deep down if it's worth your time, or if it's what you don't want to happen is for it to become something that you resent doing and you start thinking, I could be better, I could be using that time somewhere else that'll actually serve me a bit better. And then another thing that I'd probably point out is, once you do find your marketing thing that you love, whether it's YouTube, whether it's blogging, whether it is Instagram or Pinterest, double down on it. So you probably hear that quite a lot, like, you know, once you find out what's working, do more of it. And I would definitely say that is worth doing. So, you know, really, you know, it could mean putting a bit more time into it, maybe trying to do more pins. If it's Pinterest, it's the thing that you're, you know, really into. If it's YouTube, you might want to change from doing just say 1 video a week to 2 videos a week if you really, really want to try and spur your growth on. But yeah, definitely doubling down on the thing that's working is something that I really wish I'd done. So another thing that I would do if I was starting my business again from scratch is I would somehow figure out a way to build my own audience. So what I mean by this is an audience that I own. So not an Instagram following, not your TPT store customers, nothing like that. So what I mean by this is like an email list, which is something that is yours, you own it, or build your own website. Now I know that's quite daunting and that's quite a big job, but if you're somebody, maybe you're a bit more experienced in web design, or maybe you know somebody who can help you, or you can pay somebody or whatever, it's definitely worth doing, getting your own website, because you own that website, it's yours. So if, you know, if any of these other platforms crash or are hacked or something happens to them, you're kind of at the mercy of what happens there. You could end up losing all your customers, and obviously that's your whole business. Whereas if you've got an email list to fall back on, you'll always have those people's contacts, and they're obviously backed up as well. So if anything was to happen there, you'd still have them. So it's the same with your website. You own your website, so you're not at the mercy of, you know, another sort of company deciding to do something that might mess up your sales or whatever. A really good example of this is a couple of years ago now, I think it was, on Teachers Pay Teachers, they did something with the algorithm and it really negatively impacted a lot of stores, including mine. So it meant that, I think it was personalised search, I think that's what they called it. So basically when people were searching for things, they were getting given different results from however the algorithm worked previously. I'm not entirely sure what changed about it, or, you know, whatever, but I do remember for that entire year that was going on, my sales dropped, not massively. Like, I know of other stores who their sales dropped really badly, like they were making less than half what they were making previously, like earnings wise, which is, you know, all of a sudden for that to happen to you is pretty bad. And I remember, I actually have it, like a picture of it marked on my analytics, on, you know, my earnings and things like that, the date and my views as well, so obviously it affected your views. And on my Teachers Pay Teachers store, the day they turned it off, because it was quite a big thing that they were going to turn it off, because obviously they were, I'm assuming the business, obviously Teachers Pay Teachers was obviously losing money as well. The day that they turned it off, my views went from kind of like a low like that and skyrocketed, and I've kind of stayed up there ever since. So like a lot of sort of people we're kind of saying, oh, it's not really made a difference, and it's fine, it's not, that's kind of not true. I mean, different people had different experiences, but I know for me, the day they turned it off, I noticed a massive increase in my views, and my earnings went back to what they were previously. So so obviously that is a real life example of what could happen if you rely too much on something that's not yours, like a marketplace or another website. So yeah, if I was starting my business again from scratch, I would definitely have something that's mine, whether it is an email list, if you don't want to go down a website or a blog route that you own. Definitely have even an email list, even if you're not sending things out yet, you're just collecting them. That is obviously better than nothing. So another thing that I would do if I was starting my teacher business from scratch is I would try and think of myself as a business owner from the very beginning, rather than just a resource creator. So I think when I was starting out, I did, focus a lot on creating resources, and that was kind of what I thought I was. And I was just somebody who created worksheets and sold them, rather than looking at like the bigger picture of my business. And obviously when you think about it, you're not just the person who's creating, you're also probably the person who's doing the marketing, whether it's email lists, Instagram, blog writing, whatever. But all these other skills that you're using to build your business, whether it's blog writing, whether it's creating Instagram posts, whether it's creating videos, those are all skills that could also be part of your business that you could then earn money from. So you could do freelance work doing this, you can do consultation work doing this, you can do virtual assistant work doing this, and this could all be part of your business. You don't just have to be doing the one thing. As I said, the mistake that I made, just thinking about making worksheets. You could also think about, when you're ready, how to expand your business. And again, it's not just about creating that one thing. You could create workshops to go along with it. You could do a podcast, you could do lectures to go along with the thing that you create. You could even make, physical things, whether it's maybe print on demand stuff or handmade things, or there's so many different things that you could do. And I think that's something that I really wish that I'd done from the beginning, was almost look at the bigger picture of my business and think about, right, where is this going to lead me? As well, if you're sort of taking your mind away from just thinking of yourself as, oh right, I'm creating resources, think about it as, right, these resources are helping solve teachers' problems. So what other things might they be having problems with? What other things might they find useful to help solve these problems? And as I said, that's where all these other things come in. So great, these worksheets or activities that you're creating will help them solve this particular problem in their classroom or whatever it is they're trying to teach. But what other things can you give them? Can you give them a workshop, as I mentioned? Can you give them a workbook? Can you create like a physical thing, like maybe a diary? Maybe it's like time management you're talking to them about, or lesson planning or whatever. So think about what other things you could offer that could give your customers, teachers, what else could help them? What else could help them solve that problem, rather than just that activity or just that worksheet? So yeah, that is something that I kind of wish I'd sort of thought of at the big picture, as I said. And if I was starting from scratch, I would probably try and have that mindset a bit earlier on. And then the next thing that I would have in mind if I was starting my teacher business now is having, again, the big picture, the long game in mind. So, and I do think this has led to quite a lot of the mistakes that I've kind of mentioned in the past. So instead of chasing quick wins or quick things that you're going to get a quick kind of result from. So for example, some of the things that I did that resulted in quick wins would be Instagram. So you post on Instagram, you immediately get some sort of attention, whether it's likes, views, comments or whatever back from doing that post. But in the long term, is that post going to help your business any? Probably not, because of the way the algorithm works. It's very quick, it doesn't last very long. Same with when I create seasonal products. That's something that I also would put down to a bit of a quick win. And obviously I still love creating seasonal products, I still will. However, it's definitely more of a quick win than creating something that's evergreen. So I would often create seasonal things that I knew would be popular right away. So I would create seasonal stuff maybe a month or two before the season, knowing fine well it'll sell really well in that season, say Halloween or autumn or whatever. but overall, that's the only time of the year they're going to sell. Whereas if I'm doing evergreen products, I do find that evergreen things maybe take a little bit, longer to gain a bit of traction, just because they're not seasonal, they're not like hot right now, but they're definitely worth doing because obviously you can sell them all year round and they could potentially be a bestseller all the time. Another thing that I wish I'd done, which again is kind of looking ahead at the sort of like the long game view of things, is I really wish I'd started a sort of long form content sooner. So I do have a blog, and I do have, blog posts up and things that do get traffic, they do generate traffic to my TPT store. However, I started that a little bit later on and it's very patchy because sometimes I enjoy doing it, sometimes not as much, I don't know. Whereas I've always wanted to try and do YouTube, and it just wasn't, as you can probably see from the videos on my channel, it's very patchy when I released them, and I just wasn't I just didn't have enough time to kind of stay consistent with it, whereas now I do. But what I wish I'd done, if I was going back and starting again, is I wish I'd just picked a form of long form content, whether it was a blog or a YouTube, probably YouTube to be quite honest with you, and I really wish that I'd just doubled down on it and stuck at it and just put my time and effort into that rather than stopping and starting, trying different things. As I say, try to do things that were a quick win like Instagram or TikTok, or just jumping on whatever the trend was. So yeah, I really wish I'd picked something that was a bit more longer lasting right at the very beginning, because imagine if I'd been doing this YouTube for 6 years, where I would be now with it. Like, that's what I sort of keep on thinking to myself. And another thing that I wish that I was a bit more consistent with, again, looking ahead at the long game, and I was literally just thinking this before I started filming this video, is Pinterest. I do have a bit of every little while I always question myself, I'm like, is it worth it? Is it worth doing Pinterest? Oh, I'm not really getting much views, I'm not really getting much engagement from my pins, or when I go in I'm only getting this many impressions, and I have to always stop myself and just think, no, Pinterest, again, like YouTube and things, is a long game. Look at the data. Again, going back to another one of the tips that I mentioned at the beginning, look at the data. Now, I've got pins that I posted 5 years ago that are still getting, I want to say, thousands of views per month. But I also have pins that I only posted maybe 3 or 2 years ago that are getting thousands of views. And that's what I have to keep on reminding myself. Just because I've done a pin like last week or a couple of months ago doesn't mean that in a year or two's time it's not going to get picked up in the algorithm and then generate me lots of views. And even if it doesn't generate thousands of views per month, it still generates maybe hundreds or even 50 views per month. And when you add that together over the years, that's a lot of views, that's a lot of people's eyes on your stuff. And you don't get that from the likes of Instagram or TikTok unless you go like super duper viral and other people share your video, but chances are you don't get that. So again, with Pinterest, I really wish if I was starting again, I would definitely be putting time into Pinterest. And even though you're not going to get the sort of gratification from it right away, years time you will. And there is definitely some things that I've put up there that are just gaining traction now, and I think I posted them, I want to say 1, 2, 3 years ago, as I mentioned before. So yeah, that's another thing that I really wish I sort of thought about, again looking sort of at the long game of things. So yeah, evergreen products, picking a long form content, whether it's YouTube or a blog, Pinterest, because that's a long game thing, and as I mentioned before, email. That's also a long game thing because it takes time to build your email list. But again, if you start it and just keep chipping away at it, you will be grateful you started it. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was putting time into SEO or keyword research for certain things. So again, that could be for products, that could be for your website, it could be for YouTube, whatever it is, Pinterest. Definitely putting time into SEO, and that is definitely something, again, that's a long game thing. It might take a little while for your stuff to get seen. I know for a couple of my blog posts, it took maybe a year or so after they were posted, and then there's a couple of them that were ranked on like page 1 of Google, but it takes time. So yeah, I do think if I was starting again from scratch, thinking about what things are worth looking ahead and what things that I need to think about if I want to be successful, keep on being successful in the future, not just going for the quick wins. So overall, the main thing I've learned about building a teacher business, it's not just about finding that one magical platform and that one thing that just makes your business, super duper successful or go viral. It's about all these little things that I've mentioned that kind of work together and fall into place. And I definitely think the whole thinking ahead, the long game thinking, the big picture thinking is what I would definitely do if I was starting from scratch. And I really do wish I'd done that. So if you found this video useful or interesting, make sure and subscribe and turn the notification bell for my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!